have an impressive company, you want to get more business, but do you command your brand? I have Jeremy Ryan Slate here today, and we're going to be talking about how you can do just that. I'm going to bring him up right after we thank our sponsor. Every business needs a book, including yours. Visit freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com today to learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Once again, that's freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Jeremy Ryan Slate. Jeremy, how are you feeling today?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. I really appreciate you having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You are making big moves in the industry, helping a ton of people, and it's impressive what you've been up to. I want to ask you, how did you decide to do it?
In terms of like podcasting or the company, because I guess there's two
Both
different
of them,
viewpoints on
both
that.
of them. Yeah.
So in terms of like podcasting, I've been a listener since like 2009. I've been listening to this same podcast since then called the No Agenda Show, and I've always listened to Adam Curry and John Dvorak over there. My college professor actually got me into it, and my master's is in ancient history. So I came out, was teaching school for a couple of years, and my mom ended up actually having a really bad stroke in 2012. And
Oh, sorry to hear.
thank you. I tried a lot of different things, man. And I wasn't very good at many of them. So just really as a creative outlet, I started podcasting. And in my first 30 days, we saw 10,000 listens. I've gotten to interview like so many people that I really, really admire. And about a year into that, people started saying to me like, well, hey, can you do this for me? So we actually started a done for you podcast business where we did everything, including like booking you on some interviews to launch it. And we created some great shows for people. But, number one, it wasn't very profitable. Number two, people were saying, this is great. And I really enjoy this show. But what if I could just go on other shows? So we dropped the 80% that didn't really fit. And we really just focused on that. And that is really where Command Your Brand came from.
Who has been your favorite guest you've had on, or maybe like the top 3 to 5 on your own show?
Oh my gosh, man. I feel like that's having to choose one of your kids. It's like really hard to do that because we're almost over 800 episodes, or almost up to 900 episodes at this point. I'm a
You want to know the
huge.
secret to that? My friend told me.
What's that?
We were on the boat last summer, and she's like, I think one of her daughters was next to her, and she said something like, you're my favorite, and she walks away or goes in the water swimming, and I was like, you said the same thing to her other daughter last week. And she's like, that's the secret. The favorite is always the one you're talking to.
I guess it's good if they don't find out, right?
Well,
I don't know.
Good thing I didn't announce it publicly or anything. I did leave their names out, but
Yeah.
she'll know who it is.
Well, so I guess if I had to look at it, like there's so many I've enjoyed for like different reasons. Like I'm a huge Yankee fan, and I was a huge fan of when he played Nick Swisher that played for the Yankees and for Oakland. So I had Nick on last year, which was amazing, and it was a really great experience. I'm a huge racing fan, so I had 3-time Indy 500 champion Elio Castroneves on the show, which is a very, very cool experience. Jonathan Goldsmith, who you may also know as the most interesting man in the world from the Dos Equis commercials, that was a very cool interview. Trying to think of who else. Danica Patrick, another race car driver that was super cool. AJ Hawk, I'm a huge Green Bay Packers fan, so that was very cool to get to talk to one of my favorite players. There's just so many, man, for like different reasons. Brad Thor, who's one of my favorite thriller authors. So there's so many people I've gotten to talk to, and it's just special for me because I've followed them for so long.
So for someone listening that, they have a successful company, maybe they have a podcast, maybe they don't, but how are you able to connect with these people to command your brand?
Well, there's a couple different viewpoints on that. The first being when I started the show, I made a list of the top 100 people that I most admired, and I started reaching out, and I had a lot of success right away, which was great. But the other thing is, you're continually reaching out, and I say there's a hierarchy too, which a lot of people don't understand. You have a better chance if you can, get directly in contact with the person. And as you go farther outside of that, their assistant, their PR person, once you've kind of reached like a manager or a business manager or something like that, you're not going to have much luck. The person you're never going to talk to is a speaker booker, just not going to have a shot. And I'll tell you, like, as well, if you're trying to reach people that are athletes that are currently playing or within like 3 to 5 years of retirement, a lot of them are still very active on Instagram. And I think that age range is important because it's like the ones that actually actively use Instagram. I've had a lot of luck getting athletes through direct messages on Instagram. That's been a really, really great one for me as well. And then some of them, it's just been the more people you interview, the more people you meet. I had former Ohio State head coach Jim Tressel on the show, and I got in touch with him because I had AJ Hawk on the show who played for him at Ohio State. So there's been a lot of introductions along the way, as well as, we're always actively reaching out, every single month. For us, really, when we're looking for great guests, it's an outward process. And I think so many times people just want it to happen to them.
I love that you're sharing that it's a process, because
yeah,
people don't realize that it takes time, and sometimes people are just not around.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that have even reached out to get a hold of me, and whether my team gets it or not, it's just like I was legit just gone, or it's not when I schedule when to do things. It's not like I'm just going in there every day like, oh, who came in the next 2-3 days. It might be a week or two later, but then if it's a good fit, we can take it a step further. So to the point,
even from that standpoint too, like, it may be a great fit, but it also depends, like, is that person doing media? Do they have a reason to do interviews at that point in time as well? So like, one of the things I'm always watching is, as well as on Amazon, there's actually a list of upcoming releases. So I'm actually always watching that list too, to see like who has a book coming out and when, because that's a really big reason that people are going to do media pushes.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you're saying it's easier to get them if they're doing a media or book tour or something, than just randomly taking a shot on the goal, which there's nothing wrong with, but just realize it might be harder.
Yeah, because a lot of like famous and well people, like, though we'd love them to, they don't always do media just to do media. So you have to kind of know like what their plan is, what their strategy is, what they're promoting, and when they're promoting it, and you're going to have a much better shot of getting on the interview. I mentioned I had one of my favorite authors on the show, Brad Thor, and he wasn't doing a lot of media at the time I first contacted him, but he said, hey, it's May 2019. In May 2020, I have a new book coming out called Near Dark. So we set up an interview in March of 2020. So like, you just have to be willing to kind of play that long game.
What would you say is the normal cycle when you're saying a long game? Because some people think that's a month, some people think it's a 6 months, some people think it's a year. What do you define as long game, and what would you say is the typical cycle for booking someone? I'd say that has some authority, credibility, that it obviously isn't in your I just say Rolodex, but in your phone book.
So I would say like playing the long game can sometimes mean years. Like, it took me 5 years to get an interview with Dave Asprey, and that was continually following up until eventually he had a book coming out, and that's when it worked out. For the average like celebrity you're trying to get that doesn't always do media, I'd say your average is probably at about 6 months waiting time. A lot of times is what I found. So like, we had Robin Sharma on the show. I booked Robin 6 months out from we actually even did the interview. So you have to be willing to do that. And we had a former CIA director on, David Petraeus. It took a year for that to get booked. So a lot of these are, we're doing the long game, but we're also tracking what was said, when was it said, when were they told to follow up, and things like that. So my team runs this spreadsheet of everything that we have done on our side. And I think a lot of people aren't prepared for that portion. So you're going to miss out on a really great guest that you really want to have on, because you're not continually tracking everything that was communicated and, when they said to reach out again.
What would you say to someone who, excuse me, what would you say to someone who took a shot on goal, it didn't work out, but their assistant said, follow up in the next 6 months or so?
Mm-hmm.
Would you actually follow up, or do you think that's just a polite no thanks?
So sometimes it's a polite no thanks, I'll be honest with you, but I treat it as a it's what they said. And you'll find out that consistency more times than not will net you the guest, because they may actually be doing something. So if they say follow up in 6 months, my first response is actually, well, great. If you have something coming up in 6 months, let's actually schedule it now so we both have something to work towards. I've netted a lot of guests that way. Or if they push back again and they really are pushing you off, you could say, okay, great. I will follow up with you in 6 months, and you put that in the spreadsheet. But I've actually, believe it or not, come back to that with, great, let's schedule something now so we have something to work towards. And it's worked really well. It's netted me a lot of, high level guests that say, okay, well, we do have a media push coming at that time. It'd be nice to kind of line things up.
What are you doing different now than when you first launched? Because you made the comment, I was going to say, I have in my notes here, I mean my mental notes, but I'm hearing you when you said, I made a list of the first 100. What were you doing for those first 100 where now, and I'm thankful for this too, don't get me wrong, I was willing to do the first 100 on my own. I'm like, I know it'll get easier. I know it'll get easier. And the truth is, it's just some grit and tenacity. There's just some grit and tenacity with the first 100, but what were you saying in those first 100 messages, and is it anything different than what you're doing now?
Well, to a standpoint, it's definitely different. So like when I'm pitching, I always lead with purpose. Like the purpose of the show is blank, because I think too many times people lead with numbers. In the beginning, I didn't have numbers. So like you can't really lead with numbers because, hey, I have one listen, come check me out. Like that's it's when you're pitching a guest, it's got to be what's in it for them. And I think that's not something people always think about. So, first it's the purpose of the show, then it's what's in it for them. And then I lead with people we've already had on. And at that point in time in the beginning, it was honestly the first couple people I had say yes to me, I hadn't even interviewed yet. So it was interviews scheduled and done. And now it's just, guests previous on the show have been. And so that's something that's really different. But other than that, the pitch format really hasn't changed that much because it's been very successful. The things we've added through the years is as we've gotten more media mentions like the Inc. and the Forbes and stuff like that. As we've gotten more higher caliber guests, that's changed. The thing that we do that's actually really, really successful is when you're reaching out to certain types of guests. So let's say a musician, right? Okay. I'm going to add links to episodes of other high-level musicians I've had on the show, people that they may have heard of or may understand, so it creates trust. So that's something we do now that I couldn't really do in the beginning because I didn't have those assets or those things. So we're constantly looking at, okay, so this is a baseball player. Here's a few, like we've had Johnny Damon on the show. We've had Nick Swisher on the show. We've had a lot of other well-known players. Like that's something you're going to add in your pitch. It's going to add a little bit of credibility, and then they'll be like, oh, I'm familiar with that guy. Yeah, I can see he's done that. So I'm comfortable. Because a lot of times if people haven't heard of you, which most of the time they're not going to have heard of you when you're pitching, it's going to give them some familiarity and also a sample so they can see what you've done.
For someone that's reaching out to these people and is afraid to, how would you say you should get past that? If you have these top 100, you want to reach out to them.
Yeah.
Maybe you're refine the pitch, maybe you're not, but it's more of an internal struggle. How do you get past any mental blocks like that? I'm not hearing any from you. It sounds like you just had to execute and take the work, but I know some people are probably going, how the heck did he just do it? Like,
well,
how do you start with that point of, it's okay. Everyone does this. There's people that do this 24 hours a day, all day, every day.
Well, so here's the thing, man. Like I'm not going to say I'm ever like the most courageous person out there or whatever, but at the time when I started, I had failed at a bunch of things. So what's the worst that could happen? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's my wife and I have this thing that we say to each other every stressful situation we go through in our lives, in our business. We kind of look at each other and go, but did you die? Well, no, we didn't die. So we're still here. That's pretty good. A lot of this pitching is done through email or social media or whatever. The worst thing that can happen is somebody doesn't answer you or says no. Like they're not going to jump through the cell phone and throttle you. Like it's just not going to happen. So I think when you can get past that and understand like, hey, it's going to happen. If they say no, that's fine. It's at least they're communicating back to me. So you just kind of be okay with that and kind of shoot for the stars, man. Because if you don't, you're never going to have a shot. The very first person I reached out to when I started the show back in 2015 was Seth Godin. And he was actually very nice too. He said, hey, I wish you a lot of luck, but this is a brand new show, so it wouldn't really be that beneficial to me. When you get to 400, let me know. So, he was episode 400 of the show. I did hold him to that. So you have to really just be willing to shoot for the stars, man. What's the worst thing that could happen? You could get it eventually, or you could get it right now.
Oh, really? Wow. That's pretty impressive. Let me know when you get to 400. I'm back.
Hey, man, 390. I shot him an email. I'm like, hey, dude, we were almost at 400. He's like, well, I did promise you that. So, let's do it. I sent him a screenshot of the email. I saved it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for podcasting, what else would you be doing? If it wasn't for podcasting, then what?
I'd probably still be teaching. When I started this whole thing, I was a burnt out high school teacher, but I've always been somebody that's really enjoyed education, someone that's always really enjoyed learning. So if it wasn't podcasting, I'd probably still be doing that. It was the thing that led me to starting a business. It was the thing that led me to connecting with a lot of people. But if it weren't for that, that's probably still what I'd be doing.
So you said you started the podcast in 2015. When did you start the booking agency?
In 2016. And the original name was, the original name was getfeatured.com. We had another co-founder. Things didn't really work out. So towards the end of that year, we became Command Your Brand.
With all the people you've had coming through, with all the people you've connected with in the industry as a whole, where do you see it going in the next 5 to 10 years?
So I think we're really going towards, more of a consumer driven media. And that's why I think podcasting is in a really good space right now. Because if you look at people want to watch Netflix, they want to listen to, Prime, they want to do a lot of this different stuff. And they're not being driven by cable as much anymore. Like, I don't know about yourself, but like, I don't have any friends that wait for a certain show to come on at 8 o'clock every night, unless it's a live sporting event. That's about it. So I think it's really being driven in that way. And that's the same way that podcasts are. It's being driven by, what people want does well, what people don't want doesn't do well. And so I think that's what's really interesting about it. And we've seen a lot of these big brands try to come in, like, Spotify and these different companies. And I think that they're seeing that they're trying to make the industry the way they want. And they're not seeing a lot of success about this. I know there was a release that came out not too long ago where Spotify was second guessing their deal with Joe Rogan, because they're looking at it saying, oh, we're not actually making the amount of money we thought we were going to make in this investment. And I think it's because they're trying to treat it like, either cable or the music industry or something like that. And it's very much consumer driven. So I think the creators like yourself and myself that understand that and give listeners what they're looking for or what they want, we're in a really unique and awesome position right now, man.
What about the, I don't want to say the name out loud, but it's her. It starts with an A and ends with an A. So far, so good.
Starts with an A and ends with an A.
Lex?
Athena? Oh, if you say her name, she's going to talk back to you. I don't know, because I still don't even know that many people that use those features to listen to podcasts, because it's really an individually driven medium, like that's on their phone or something like that. I know sometimes I'm listening in the background, but I like the fact that a lot of time I'm listening on my phone. So if I go from place to place to place, the place that I was listening to is kept on my device. So I understand people have been trying to use that, but at least from people I've known and talked to, I haven't seen a huge uptick in, those type of devices.
So I've had people on my show, and we've talked more on the super technical side of stuff, and I want to get your thoughts on the future of podcasting with AI. Do you see the space? Do you see the need? Imagine having me host your show as not even virtually, it's not even the right word, where you can take someone else's voice, or I could take yours to do a guest host episode, and seeing that a place in podcasting where people are just using each other's voice and licensing it out to be doing different stuff with it. Once you get the voice print, they can just use it for whatever.
That creeps me out, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. That really creeps me out, man.
It's a pretty advanced thing, but I mean, you're an industry professional, and when he was telling me about it, I was like, what? He's like, yeah, man, you can have anyone host your show. I'm like, why would I don't want someone else to host my show? He's like, but then you could host other shows. I go,
why?
I would. That's intriguing, but I've seen a few people, talk show hosts do it. Like, I think it's like they're out of town, they're sick, they're whatever, and they have some other celebrity come on, and it's like, oh, the guest host this. But I'm just like, the application for that would be intriguing to me, but the legal ramifications of just...
Dude, I'd be too worried about like identity theft and stuff like that. Like somebody like steals my house title or something. Like I don't want to deal with that, man. That's too creepy to me. Like, I don't know if you've seen... It was big on Twitter. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen this about a month ago on Twitter. They were doing deep fake Tom Cruise, and it was some guy that like kind of looked like him, so they like messed with his face or whatever. that weirds me out, man, because I think that's got a lot of legal ramifications, like you said, because you're going to have a ton of problems because especially like like in the grand scheme of things, I'm not really famous, but for famous people, like they spend their whole life building that identity and that brand. That could be like intellectual property theft at that point. So I don't know, man. I think there's a lot of legal aspects to look at with that, and that just creeps me out anyway.
So I'm hearing a hard no for you.
Hard no, man. Hard pass.
At least for now, maybe in another decade or something. But yeah, there's a lot of talk about that because I have used her and said, hey, put on the Expert Authority.
You sound like the
podcast.
teacher on Charlie Brown.
And it's cool because you can listen to the Expert Authority Effect podcast.
Yeah.
Through all those devices, and then when you couple it with the way technology and AI is going, the other thing is in the movie industry. My background's in film and broadcast special effects and stuff, where not just to get someone, we've seen it where they take the celebrity and they kind of do them in CG. Avatar is a perfect example, but literally getting a body clone so that way they can be working on 10 or 12 different movies simultaneously, or after they pass on, still using their image and likeness.
Oh, like they did in Star Wars. That was weird as anything. Like they did with Carrie Fisher after she'd already passed on, and they did like the younger version of her at the end of the movie. Dude, that was weird.
So that's and I keep seeing and hearing a lot of spillover into podcasting because it's like we just need to manipulate audio.
Yeah, which is easier. I know. However, even have you worked with the script before? The script is like you can like have it record your voice and have it fill in gaps and stuff in audio. It's still kind of weird. It's kind of useful, like when you have to like overdub something, but it's the technology's out there, you know?
So that brings me to my last question before the next thing. Where do you see video playing a role in podcasting?
So that's interesting too, because I know for me, and I'm curious, I guess, what your viewpoint is on this, but for me, I found that like the teaser clips are extremely valuable because that pulls people in, gets them interested. But I still find most people listen to audio of my show. And when I've even talked to listeners, like, and they listen to it on YouTube or Rumble or something like that, they're usually just listening to it in a tab in the background and not even watching it. So I think video is great for grabbing attention and pulling people in and, using the second largest search engine in the world, which is YouTube. But it remains to be seen where it's going to go after that because of what listening habits are.
So now here's a double loaded question. And I appreciate you for sharing the honesty because there's no wrong answer. I was legit just curious because the argument is podcasting isn't video.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at its core, and there's the purists who say you can't. I've seen presentations who flat out say, don't do a video podcast, don't do a video podcast. Well,
yeah,
I like breaking the rules, always have, probably always will. So I'm just comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I've always told everyone, whether you use the clip, live stream it, whatever, get the person on camera, because right now it's nice to connect with you and be able to see you, read body language. I truly believe it makes a more dynamic presentation and interview regardless. Because you're never worried, like even on the phone, you're like, do you want, like you're just wondering when to talk or when to say, or it's just harder with the timing, at least for me. So the double loaded question for you is, do you think your audience is primarily audio because that's been your primary focus since day one, and that's just who you're drawing in? Or do you really think the video is just too much extra work and the payoff isn't worth it?
So I think my audience is primarily audio because that's kind of where I started. We're seeing a lot more growth in video. And honestly, I've found that I think just YouTube, because it has so many people on it. We've been experimenting with some of the newer platforms, and since they're newer, it's just been easier to get visibility. Like we've been doing a lot on Rumble recently, and I've been getting hundreds and thousands of views on videos over there with like not even doing anything. So I think we're starting to build more of a video audience, but at the same time, and I think you'll appreciate this just because of how you run things with your show. I think you'll get this, like the positioning in the video, even if it's a few frames, is actually really valuable to the person being interviewed or the person interviewing too. And so I think that's what you're missing out with when you do audio, because you're not being seen and perceived with that person. And I think that positioning that you gain from that is very, very valuable.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And again, it's all the more reason to do it. It is a lot of work to cut it
Oh
up
yeah.
and do all that. And especially if you're live streaming it, especially if you're doing it well. I was actually more comfortable with it, so it wasn't a second thought for me. But just having a screenshot of, or like, oh wait, no, this way. I'm pointing to you, you're pointing to me, just to promote the episode or something. You know, you can do that, like you're saying.
Yeah.
So I think it's a personal comfort thing for someone to just jump into it with no background. I've even told people who wanted to pay me for coaching and consulting, I'm like, start here. You know, to your point with Seth Godin, you know, maybe not come back when you're at 400, but start here and wrap your head around just this to begin with, and maybe in a couple of months, because it's more work.
Yeah.
But
Well, and even
I
that,
keep
like
on
video
hearing
presence is something you have to learn as well. Like I'm still working on it myself. Like you've been doing this a long time, so like you got it, man. But like
I
for a lot of
appreciate that.
people, when they have to learn video presence, it's different. Like don't shake your head to everything the person says. Like I was really bad at that at first, or things like that. Like you have to be comfortable with being there, which is very different than just having somebody on audio and in your ears, you know?
That's true too. The on-camera presence, the media presence, because some people, you know, they joke I have a face for radio, but the reality is, physical attractiveness aside, that I don't think that makes a difference. If you have a message and you want to share it, my thing is I want to impact the most people I can, and I know that certain people listen to videos, certain people don't. It's two different audiences and some crossover. I just want to reach as many people as I can, but the reality is, yeah, you need to be comfortable on camera. You don't need to be a pro at it, but you need to at least be comfortable with it, so that way it's entertaining for people. So no real wrong answer, no real right answer. I don't have any stats saying, well, empirically I got stats from such and such that are showing. I'm actually very thankful I've done videos from the beginning. It's been a ton of work, but just curious your thoughts, because you have a successful show and company, and some people are a hard pass on it. Like I said, they've stood on stage and they're like, do not do video. It's not professional. And then other people are like, oh, I love video, and it's all they've done. So
Well, it's interesting too when you think of it, because like, dude, I've done 4.5 years, over 5 years with no video, but our growth curve has gone up now again because we're including that, and it's also like for the caliber of people I'm talking to, like I want to have that on video. So I think that's important to think of as well, because those are things you can pull into your teaser roles and things like that. So there are things you have to think about, like you have to have good lighting, you have to have, you know, the right backdrop, you have to have you know, your microphone needs to be set up differently than it would with you just setting up there. So there's a lot of things you have to think with. You know, they have to have the right type of camera. Like, I'm using a Rebel T6 to stream this right now, and I kind of want to even upgrade that because it's just I'm not liking the stream on the camera. So there's a lot of things you have to think with, you know, when you're doing video. So it's a whole different ballgame, man.
I do have one more question before we thank our sponsor, but do you want to know what I'd honestly recommend for this specifically?
I would, because your picture is great. I would
get a webcam.
Just a regular old webcam.
I am on the Brio 4K. It's a webcam.
I'm gonna write that down. Brio 4K, huh?
My film team and I, when we go on location, we film with DSLRs and mirrorless and, you know, the 4K, all the high-end stuff. It's so simplistic. I have not touched this thing in years. Set it and forget it.
Can you do like the aperture and stuff on it or no?
I believe through the software. I mean, I literally set this thing. All I turn on is the lights, and you're looking at what I get out of it. Because
your picture is awesome. Because like the thing like, because I have, like I said, I have a T6, which is like a lower level DSLR, so it doesn't even have a clean HDMI. So I have to run it through a USB, which means it downgrades it from 1080p already down to 780p. Or 720p, so it's like not even as good as it should be. So like I'm gonna check that out, man.
This is literally 4K. You need a graphics card, you need the software, and you need USB 3 wires. But it's pulling 4096 resolution, and that's how I record it.
Yeah, it looks great on my end, man. So I'm gonna have to check it out.
Well,
Brio 4K, huh?
I've told people I'll actually EAinterviews.com/equipment. I have a whole
Ah,
list of every last thing, including memory
write
chips for
this
the
down.
machine. Yeah, because I know my background is with the film cameras, but
Yeah.
I want to simplify it. I don't want all this stuff all the time I'm recording. And the thing is, the webcams are designed for exactly what we're doing. You can do it
Yeah.
with the other ones, but I just feel like they just know how to figure it out a lot easier than having to set 15 different things all the time.
Well, you gave me something to look up now, man.
Yeah, EA interviews / equipment. But yeah, I know you have even more advanced stuff, but I've told people I'm just like, just get a, if you're doing this, it works great.
Yeah.
I'm actually hoping they come out with a 6 or 8K, but I'd still get one of these just because it's simple. So this is the wheel of whatever. Oh, that wasn't
Whoa.
good. Here we go. Oh, look at that.
Wheel of whatever.
Here
Tell
we
them what
go.
they've won, Pat.
You want yellow or
All right, Vanna.
black?
Yellow looks bigger. Let's go for that. I could bet it all on black, though. Let's go black.
Okay, cool. Change it right there. So my question for you is, with all the cool people you've had on your show, who is your favorite person you've had on that wasn't just a guest, but you were able to turn into something more ongoing or business wise?
Ooh. So, like I said, I'm a huge sports fan. So I got to interview 2 years ago Ryan Roland Smith, who pitched for the Seattle Mariners. And he and I became really good friends. We talk all the time and we trade podcast guests back and forth. So that's been kind of cool. And I'm trying to see if it can get me on like a guest spot doing some baseball analysis because that'd be kind of fun for me.
Oh,
But
nice.
that's been the coolest one for me. Ryan is an awesome dude. Somehow ended up in the major leagues after pitching in Australia. So that's very, very cool. But Ryan's an awesome guy.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you for sharing that. We're going to thank our sponsor and come back with the imperfect action round. Every business needs a book, including yours. Visit freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com today to learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Once again, that's freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com. And we are back with the imperfect action round. Jeremy, are you ready to take imperfect action?
Dude, let's do it.
All right. 3 questions, 60-second or less answers. The first one is, what is the fastest path to the profits?
Wow. So I would say in podcasting, it's aligning it with your business, not just expecting to get the thing big and try and get advertising off of that because less than less than 1% of people are ever going to do that. Your podcast needs to be aligned with your business and be part of it to actually promote that. So I would say that's the most effective way if you're looking at it through podcasting.
Excellent. Number 2, what is the biggest problem you see your prospects making and the fastest way for them to fix it?
Um, I would say that they come at this whole space with what can this show do for me or what can this host do for me? And when you show up in the viewpoint of how can I service the show? How can the people that are listening to me leave better than they came? You're actually going to get a ton out of it. But it's when you have that viewpoint of what can they do for me, not going to go so well for you.
Okay. Number 3, what is the best way to maximize customer lifetime value?
To me, it's continually offering great service. And, when you do that, people are going to want to continue to work for you because you exchange high value with everything you do. I think too often people look at, what is fair exchange when actually everything you should do would be exchanging in abundance. And for us, that's how we've had a lot of clients continue to re-sign with us over the years.
Love that. Love that. Especially the mindset.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more thing regarding books, and I want to know what you'd recommend to Expert Authority World.
Can I give 2?
You can give 3 to 5, and the show notes can handle up to 6.
Okay, so I'm going to give you 3 then. So one of my favorite, just because teaches you what is possible. The Great Bridge by David McCullough teaches about the building of the Brooklyn Bridge. Incredible. It's one of the most interesting books I've ever read. Another one is So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. Teaches you how to be the best at what you do and continue to do that. And the other is the 10X Rule by Grant Cardone, because you need to learn how much at work it's actually going to take you to get something done.
Nice. Appreciate those. Where would you like people to learn more?
Well, they can go over to commandyourbrand.com and they can find out more about what we're doing over there.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you again.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate being on your show.
My pleasure. Expert Authority World, we have another great episode here today. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. God bless.